Now, the reason I am talking about these nutrients is because indeed we need to talk about how we facilitate our people to access what will boost their immunity. How do we, you cannot just talk about avoiding getting disease when people are weak. We must talk about how to deal with this crisis through supporting our people to get immunity. And part of the support is information, but the other part of the support is actual ability to get what they are informed of. And this is therefore why I consider that on top of the measures that have been talked about by the various sources, in our country, Uganda, we really need to focus on how to support especially children and the elderly who are inherently more challenged, but also to support ordinary Ugandans to raise their ability to fight. And that is to do things that will reduce their stress, that will give them enough time to sleep, that will give them exercise, that will promote their wellness. This is the time to focus on each other's wellness. Because indeed, if we don't focus on each other's wellness, the suffering of the other people will come to us, those who think we are okay. It's absolutely important, and maybe this disease is God sent to make sure that we care for each other, that everybody is able to survive. Because whoever is not able to survive will easily pull that one who is able to survive down. And that's why, apart from the interventions that I have already talked about, which were mainly to deal with the spread of the virus, removing taxes on those things that people need to live and so on, I think it's absolutely important that we have a national conversation on interventions during this time to save all our people, especially the most vulnerable. And some of the suggestions that I'd like to present, and again, this is an area where I think all citizens should contribute, because this is not a technical area. This is a social area, a socio-economic area. It's not medical. How people become able to fight is not medical. It is socio-economic. So some of the things that I think need to be done, apart from the direct interventions we talked about, I think we need to get some doctors to where doctors are not. The UPDF, it seems they have many doctors. I don't know how many doctors they have, but when doctors were on strike, I had a threat to deploy military doctors. This is the time where such doctors can be helpful in areas which are poorly served by healthcare systems. I think military doctors should quickly be dispersed to areas to provide this information, to work with the people to get out of vulnerability. Secondly, I think it's important to declare centers in the districts. I haven't heard this. To declare centers in the districts where people who need support can get support. You know, and indeed where support should be sent to help the elderly, to help the vulnerable children, to maintain their health in the manner that I talked about, to remain able to fight disease, to have nutrition, to have hygiene, to have those things that they ordinarily need. Similarly, to have centers for those who are suspected to have the disease. I haven't had a designation of centers where if I suspect that I have a disease, I shouldn't walk to the clinic where others are and cause problems. I think there should be specially designated areas, either of health facilities or even specially set up to deal with those who are suspected of having the disease and indeed to manage those who have the disease. This is especially important in the districts because, again, that's where there is huge challenge in respect of these areas. I have already talked about the management of areas that are going to remain for some time crowded. For example, those market areas, I think we should consider, rather than congesting all these places in the markets, I think we should consider opening up other areas where people can easily access market items. In other words, because markets are few and congested and people must go there, let's have temporary markets set up, managed, of course, with the same guidelines, but which decongests these markets. And again, like I said earlier, facilitated with the hygiene materials that they need. Now, we have talked about the stressful situations during this time. So we really must look at income, because income is going to collapse on the part of many people. And income has already collapsed for many people, those who are engaged in import, export, those who are engaged in the industry of tourism, whose income depended on tourists coming and things like that. These are people who are immediately going to find themselves totally lost in terms of income and extremely vulnerable. So I think it is important that special measures are made to safeguard people's incomes and people's businesses. I have not had any specific measures out there being suggested, and I think the whole country needs to focus on this area and suggest these measures. The reason countries have reserves in their central banks is to deal with emergencies like these. If we don't have a reserve, we don't then possibly consider ourselves as a country that is well managed. But whatever reserve we have, I think this is a time when it's rightly drawn down to support citizens to get out of the tough times. To that extent, I think to support all people who are striving, all means of reducing interest on loans must be undertaken equally immediately. And the central bank can have an influence on this, first of all by reducing its own lending rates, but also by engaging with lending institutions. Secondly, there has to be a centrally driven restructuring of credit that is available to people and businesses. At any rate, apart from restructuring, I think it would be unfortunate to recall loans during the pandemic itself. I think loans should not be recalled during the time of the pandemic, so that there is less stress, there is more money available to people to fight for survival during this time. Similarly, I think those who rent where they sleep, there should be, again, both a popular call, social call, but also state-driven call to landlords, wherever they are, to restructure rent obligations on the part of our people during this time. And at any rate, not to evict people who are unable to meet their obligations during this time. Because again, that will intensify a crisis that we are dealing with. So again, I think there should be guidelines and even regulations relating to this matter. Lastly, I think there should be tax waivers or tax holidays on businesses that are especially vulnerable because of what is going on. I have already pointed out those who are in the service industries that are directly hit, in the tourism industry, in all its ramifications, in the transport industry, because we are moving towards lockdown. If you lock people from moving, that means the transport industry is directly hit. In fact, the air industry is already in extreme crisis. Those in restaurants and others. I think the important point here is that there has to be a special effort to cause tax relief and business support for all our people so that businesses survive. Just like we want people to survive, our businesses must be helped to survive the crisis. And this will require a direct and critical intervention of the state. These are some of the areas I thought are important to raise as we all continue to grapple with the serious challenges that we have at hand. We need to hold each other's hand, to support each other to get out of this crisis. But as you know, our campaign is a campaign of self-defense. Even when the central support that we expect from government is not there, and quite often will not be there, let every citizen hold the hand of another citizen. Let's defend ourselves. This is the campaign that we have been conducting for some time of 12-1 ECO. This is where it is very relevant. We need to defend ourselves. even when we have no support from elsewhere, let's defend ourselves. Let our comradeship, let our brotherly and sisterly relations become as strong as possible at this time. Thank you very much, and God bless our country.